Hey, let me even say here. I think like my main goal with this TV series or like the series of content is to talk a little bit about the industry and to talk a little bit about um, some cool things that are happening and what I think is interesting on the side of marketing and even more so business industry, because I'm coming from the business side and from the corporate side, because I was working on the big tech and SaaS and startups for quite a while now, and I think I do have like a very interesting perspective on some of the stuff. So hopefully you will find it interesting as well. So let's take a look and see what's up. What we are going to talk about. Specifically today, I thought that we can start like a little bit easy and a little bit broad. And I really wanted to chat with you about something that I see quite a lot in the supermarkets right now. This topic is around like different marketing tactics. So like there's a lot of good and super evil shit that is happening online. And for me, when I'm going to the store, I'm primarily as a marketeer or as a strategist. When I'm looking at some of the messaging and some of the stuff here, I'm really asking myself why some of the messaging is happening. And one of the weird things for me really is the idea of greenwashing. And I don't know if you've like ever thought about this for a second, but when I'm looking at at the shelf and I'm looking at a lot of those labels like sustainable, eco-friendly, zero waste, biodegradable, I'm always asking myself, is that legit? Like, should I trust it? Does that like something that we kind of should all invest in? Because this is more and more of this stuff, and it's not only like in FMCG, which is like just the consumer goods. This is also happening like in retail or like in clothes. Like Nike is doing this quite a lot, and I was working for Nike for a very very long time, and I know how big this topic is internally for the company is. First, it's definitely like a big thing, right? Like it feels like a good thing, right? Because salad is super funny and it's super healthy and it's biodegradable this, biodegradable that, and it's super awesome, for reals. But when I'm like looking even further, I'm seeing that people are making those choices, right? Like when people are going to the stores and they're seeing those labels of zero waste, they're like, holy shit, cool, I need to grab it. And it's a big W, yeah, for everyone. So you would think, but no, like if you will actually dig a little deeper, now all over the place when you're looking online and when you're reading news, you're seeing the same stuff. That greenwashing is actually a misleading tactic. It's a misleading advertisement to market. So when you are not actually environmentally friendly, but you're just saying that you are. And this is kind of funny, right? Like why you would do this as a company, right? Because I feel like when you are working on something and you're working on a product, you tend to just try to be the most honest with your consumers, and you're trying to say the best thing about the customer. It's kind of weird to like openly lie about stuff. And I started to think like why that would happen. And the only reason we know about this stuff is because of the activists. And activists are really trying to dig deeper, and like the investigative journalists, and we actually can uncover some of the stuff. For example, there is a lot of class action lawsuits, and if you will like just go in and type in the Google search greenwashing, you will actually see that there's shit tons of like plethora of lawsuits against top names of the companies. For example, Nike, I've already mentioned this, $520 million lawsuit against the misleading information and an idea of misleading around the idea of move to zero, their main flagship idea of sustainability. Or H&M, class action lawsuit against the same thing, defamation and misleading the consumers, misleading the customers, which is bananas. And I started to ask myself like why that would happen. Yeah, why? Because in a way, like when I'm working on advertising, or because I was working in the advertisement agencies and I was working for Nike as well, and I actually know for a fact that Nike was doing like sustainable ideas and sustainable products for quite a lot of time. One of the things that Nike was doing was called Nike Grind, which is like the this soft material that they will put on the concrete in their, on the yard in the campus. But nobody was talking about it. It was not like a part of the marketing campaigns. So why you would put this in the marketing campaigns if it's not really a true statement? I was thinking. And after I gave it a thought, and I've started to dig deeper. And the main cue here is follow the money, friend. Follow the money. Where they actually, like, where does this originating from? Who is behind this? Who is benefiting from it? And this is a really good question when you're trying to, as a strategist and as a normal human being, when you're trying to figure out stuff. That's a normal way to ask yourself about this. So I've started to think about this, and I've started to, to look into this a little bit more. And the story, strap up, because this is going to be like a long one. The story starts from 2015. Actually starting way earlier than that. But for the sake of this particular chat, we were going to start this in 2015, which is the Paris Agreements and the United Nations Paris Agreement, which in a nutshell is a big document that outlines that we as a planet should do better, and we should reduce our carbon emissions by 2050. And yeah, this seems like a good idea, right? We should probably reduce our carbon emission. Nobody is arguing that. So that's cool. They've done it. And to reduce the carbon emissions and to keep the temperature from rising 1.5 degrees Celsius, you kind of need to do a lot of different stuff. But how you can do this? You kind of need to figure out how you will change the legislation per country, right? But it's not enough, apparently. So let's follow this. So it starts from US goals by 2050. And what they're trying to do now is they're trying to create a rating system. So they created a third party, or not created, but they've invested or co-invested in a big thing of economy ratings for the companies. And this economy ratings for the companies are really important and we will talk about them later in depth. But those ratings are forcing company to comply with those goals and to set a very similar goals for themselves. So in reality, when the company is saying all right, my goal should be associated with that, and when they're declaring that, their market value goes up, which is awesome for everyone, especially awesome for investors because they get more revenue. But the products today are very, very different from products that might be cool by 2050. So much so that there's a gap. But you kind of need to start today. You kind of need to start doing something. So even though they're not really can commit to those long timelines, they need to start green marketing program. They need to start in a way virtue signaling in order to say we are the good company for the government and for the customer, which makes sense. It's logically it does make sense to do something like this. The problem with this is the products of tomorrow and the products of today is not nearly similar. They have a very, very big gap in between each other. So marketeers have to figure out some stuff. They kind of need to figure out how to actually do this. So that's what kind of creates this idea of misleading the company, marketing efforts to polish the dirt in a way, right? And a lot of companies are trying to figure out, sometimes their pledges, the ideas, are quite positive, right? We are going to reduce our carbon footprint emissions by 70% by 2050. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, but at the same time, when you are looking at the reality, when you have to do something today, you can do very small incremental things, and they're sometimes very inconsistent, and sometimes they're borderline shady, and we will see how that goes. One of the big things that a lot of companies are using is something that is called carbon offset. It's an activity that balances the emission of carbon dioxide by other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So in reality, what it means is that they are doing something else that by definition will offset what they're doing generally. And that's sort of like the main claim to Nike and the idea of like moving to zero, because by creating some products that potentially can be less damaging to environment, you're not stopping or not changing anything at all in your current production, which kind of means that you are just virtue signaling. And the main product line is still there, and you're just adding another product line, which potentially even more damaging rather than less. So why this carbon offset became like a tactic, like why is that became sort of like a thing that companies are doing? Because I was actually quite surprised that was the case. Let's take a look at this idea of ratings. And let me introduce you to the main character in play, this huge thing that called ESG, a $44 trillion fund that was created long time ago. But the idea of the ESG is to create ratings for the companies and to give away the ratings for the companies on the stock market. And the stockbrokers who are investing the company are actually utilizing ESG rating as the main reason to invest or not invest in something. And the cool thing about the ESG rating, that it's not only rating how are you ecologically friendly, but it's also checking and taking into the account other things like community impact, labor standards, consumer responsibility. So the things that have nothing to do with carbon emissions, but have everything to do with your PR play. And it's very interesting that a lot of companies are utilizing this ESG principles as the main guiding principle of the marketing campaigns that they're doing, because guess what? They can get a better ESG rating and a better investment from the stock market. It sounds pretty scary. I will tell you that, because when I was researching this and I went into this, there's actually a lot of great investigative journalism and great reports from Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal around this in depth. And I actually want to watch one of those with you today, because I think it explains the ESG and the ESG rating in depth. And I think partially we kind of need to understand what it is to understand this a little bit better. So, shall we?
Capitalism right now is going through a reckoning. There has to be a way in which profits and planet align. ESG, in theory, should help, but that's not what is happening today.
Our sustainable investments benefit you and parts of the world that need it most.
The whole business is built on the idea that you can invest in companies that will allow you to do well as an investor, but also can do some good for the world.
Perhaps the greatest investment opportunity in modern history.
ESG is now big business. It represents, by some estimations, something like $35 trillion worth of investments. And in the last 2 years, it's grown by 15%, and that rate of growth doesn't seem to be stopping.
Underneath this entire system are ratings that look a lot like the credit ratings of companies, but are based on completely unregulated data. And one company has come to completely dominate that business, and that's MSCI.
So even though a lot of people are talking about ESG, not many know what goes into making an ESG rating, for example. And that rating is what becomes the basis for decision making for investors.
ESG ratings focuses in on what's significant to a company's bottom line.
What we found is that the foundation of this multi-trillion-dollar new cash machine for Wall Street is not at all what it appears to be, and that it's really almost exactly the opposite of what people think it is.
So are you catching this, chat? So the idea of this entire thing, of this ESG, that is really all about like, hey, we want to be better and we want to create a better planet, and we want to start you investing into the companies that are really positive, making a positive impact, is not entirely that bright, because the ESG and the companies that are supporting ESG, like MSCI, that we will talk about it in a second, and the guys are going to talk about in the video as well. It's kind of like a very deep rabbit hole, and I was not expected to find something like this when I was researching this topic, to be honest, but we're here, huh? So let's continue.
I'm Cam Simpson. I'm a senior editor and reporter for investigations at Businessweek and Bloomberg. There are about 160 different companies that sell data and ratings that purport to rate companies on their environmental, social, and governance practices or factors. Because it's a completely unregulated business, because it's completely subjective, the ratings can land anywhere across the board. MSCI's rating system is built on scores, and they're converted into ratings that look like credit ratings. AAA, top of the line, CCC, bottom. By mimicking a credit rating, which is regulated, which is based on regulated data, MSCI has created kind of an aura of respectability,
Very
an aura of
important
confidence.
thing, right? So this is an unregulated field, right? So there is no actual law systems that controls this. So they, by just mimicking those credit ratings, which is also, by the way, are super shady, they are creating an aura that this is actually somehow legit.
Around these ratings.
I'm Akshat Rathi, and I'm a reporter with Bloomberg News. I write about all things climate. MSCI has been around for more than 2 decades, and it started its life as a company that would arrange stocks in an electronic index. As the company progressed, it found this demand for ESG metrics, that people were interested in not just ensuring that they were making profits from their portfolios, but that the companies within those portfolios were also aligning with society's goals. And so about 15 years ago, MSCI acquired a number of companies that gave it the ability to be able to create ESG ratings. MSCI has become the giant in the field. By one estimate, 40 cents on every dollar that is spent on ESG ratings is earned by MSCI. So what MSCI does with its ratings really matters to the entire industry.
So if you're a company, especially a bigger company that's included in the S&P 500, for example, your ESG rating can really significantly help you in the world to get included in one of these funds. It can lower your cost of capital, which also can help you. And so they're really keen to have good ratings. And so when a company's rating goes up, MSCI produces an updated report that shows what the key factors were that led to the company moving up the ESG ratings ladder, moving up its score, moving up its rating.
Now we're coming to the crux of the story. So how are they changing the actual ratings? What is the methodology of how they're changing the ratings? And as I said, the spectrum of how they're looking at the company, at how they're looking at the rating, is very, very wide. So in fact, they can change the methodology from year to year. And the methodology is not entirely standard. They can choose to use one of the things and just drop another. And because it's not regulated, nobody can really test it, and nobody can really read the fine print of how the methodology is changing from year to year. And somehow this is happening all over the globe. And this is a $44 trillion fund. Let me remind you.
Ladder, moving up its score, moving up its rating. And so I started just with that, with a list of companies and upgrades, and to see how quickly and how high some of them could climb. We found half of the companies out of the 155 that we looked at got upgraded just for sitting still, because MSCI changed the way it weighted the score or changed the methodology, so their scores went up as a result.
Take McDonald's, for example. Its total emissions are those that match
Half of the fucking fucking companies get updated their score based on nothing. Half. 50%. Insane. This is insane.
the entire country of Portugal or Hungary. And much of those emissions come from its use of beef. But when MSCI gave it an ESG rating upgrade in April 2021, it did that by reducing the weighting of emissions from a mere 5% to nothing, and instead replacing it with a new initiative that McDonald's had launched around recycling.
Cool, huh? So this is how they're measuring this. They're not at all looking at the actual carbon emissions. They're actually looking at some of the political or PR stunts that companies are doing, because this recycling post and in the selected areas in UK, this is actually like just a new garbage bins. New fucking garbage bins.
That the recycling initiative came from installing bins in select locations in the UK and France. And when we looked at that, we found that within UK and France, there was either an upcoming regulation or a threat of a regulation which would have forced fast food companies like McDonald's and others to anyway install these recycling bins. And so McDonald's essentially got a ratings upgrade for doing the bare minimum that it should have done anyway, and for not being counted for all the emissions it was putting out into the atmosphere.
Huh? So I actually urge you to go back to this and look at this more in depth. There is a very specific evil moment at minute 8.14 when the CEO of MSCI, this rating agency, is talking about how he's protecting a capitalism by doing what they're doing, which is quite scary and quite crazy. But going back to the ESG and like this rating system. So as we said, yeah, you don't need to change things in order to get better investment or in order to be invested more on the market. So the rating system is not really skewed towards you as a company. You're not being pressured to actually deliver on the carbon emissions reduction. You're being measured on the very specific topics that are not corresponding with the actual carbon emissions. Therefore, your actions and the thing that you value the most as investor values the most, money, coming from the rating upgrades that are connected to the PR stunts. Here you go. So in reality, now when you're like going through this with the additional layer of information that we have, chat, now you're seeing the bigger picture, which is you have the United Nations Paris Pact, which is reduction of the carbon emissions. They're making a deal with ESG to start the rating and to make the companies comply with those amazing laws, because the laws of the market, you know, will dictate, and the market will connect and they will start to do better. But you need to be better rating to get more money. The companies and the investor says we definitely need more money. The market value goes up, and they're just saying, hey guys, we just need to make this happen. So the actual fault or the actual big pressure are going on the marketing teams instead of the products. Because if you're installing garbage bins and you're posting about it, you're getting a better rating. Therefore, you're getting more money and your capitalization is getting bigger. So that's a huge problem. Yeah. And we are bio, eco, zero waste angels. That's sort of like the communication that are happening on the market. And that is sort of like the back wheel of how this greenwashing is actually appearing. And this is extremely funny because the term greenwashing actually appeared first in 1986. and it was created in the hotel industry. And the activist actually understood that the claims of, hey, let's reduce the amount of towels that we are using to be more green, which probably you saw in the hotels by now, is not at all connected to the environmental safety. It's actually connected to the reduction of cost. Well, there you go, chat. This is how the world works. I'm sorry to break this to you, but that's the cruel reality of the world we're living in. So, going back to this, is that it? Like, is that just like a finishing line for today's Marketing Friday, and we're just like living in a cruel world? Well, no. EU for the rescue! Da, 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 da. So, one of the things that EU is actually working on in European Parliament, because they've saw that a lot of these things are coming from the ESG and coming from the market and the inability of market to self-regulate itself, they actually figure out a way to produce a law that will help us ban and eliminate the advertisement that are not supported by a scientific claim. So if, for example, a company are going to the market and they're saying that we are, conscious choice, we are like zero waste, they actually have to provide a third-party research and scientific research and paper and prove to the government of EU that that's in fact the case. So you cannot really create like a flashy headline by installing some garbage bins and claim that you are carbon footprint positive anymore, which is a great thing. And this is a great initiative. And by the way, this is actually already, so this is the wall that is going to be protecting the customer from the evil green sticky of marketing. Cool, huh? And this is really cool because it's already working in some of the countries. For example, one of the things that if you're living somewhere in Europe, specifically if you're living in France, Germany, Netherlands, or in some other countries in Scandinavia, one of the things that you might see on the shelves is something that is called Nutri-Score, which is a very cool thing. It's actually very amazing. What they are doing is for every product that contains like certain products inside, or like a certain components of the product, I should say, they are rating this from A to E based on the value for your body, like not based on the pretentious claims of the marketing or the packaging. This is purely based on like how healthy this is for you to consume. Yeah, and this is actually a quite big label and sticker that you will see on the milk, and the milk I think is actually rated C in this rating. And for example, like most of the sweets are rated E, right? And there are some very, very special ones that can be rated B, and you're like, they're flying off the shelves because they are, if you're a sweet tooth, you know how hard it is to find like a conscious choice when you're going to the shelf. I definitely know that. So in the end, let's try to think like overall score for greenwashing, like where it is and like how good it is, or how bad it is rather. I think as a marketeer, I can really understand. I can really relay to the guys who are working in the companies like Nike. And one of the things that if you've, I don't know if you saw this or not, but Nike Grind bumper plates. So I've told you about Nike Grind, and which is like the recycle thing. And now they're actually making like a weights out of it, like a bumper plates. And that's not only Nike, like Rogue is doing the same, and you can see this by like those grains inside of it. And this is a great initiative. Like I think, like honestly, like to do something that is like positive for the planet and actually build something out of it is awesome. But I think the incentives for the companies are currently not set up in the right way, and that's why it's creating a lot of miscommunication and actually like false advertisement, because it's set up in that way. And I feel like that after the EU will start and put their laws in, and that will actually make a big difference, because inside of EU we have almost 500 million people, 500 million customers that are paying customers. And usually when the laws in EU are made, they're creating a big precedent, which what happened with GDPR, if you didn't heard about that, which is the privacy and law protection for your data. And each time now, if you're going to each service and you're using the services in the Europe, you need to agree with the GDPR approvals. And one of those great things and the bad things at the same time, because, for example, we couldn't get Threads, the app by Instagram, because of those regulations, and they had to make an additional things to prove that they are not, taking the data for granted, which I think is an awesome thing. So for now, I would say that I would rate all of this communication around 2, which is, I don't think that's intrinsically evil, maybe even 3. And I think there are some companies that are legitimately trying to do a good thing, but the vast majority of the companies that are playing in this field are incentivized from a very dark place, financially speaking. So hopefully we'll have a new laws, and that will create a new set of marketing rules for all of the companies that will give us a better product in the end. So that's our Marketing Friday talk for today. I hope this was enjoyable, and it's definitely going to be a part of the video that we will launch together. But hey, let me know down the comments if that was interesting at all for you, and I hope to do more of this content moving forward. So thank you for joining, and thank you for watching and listening.